Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. So today's video is going to be a little bit different. It is mostly going to be done in time-lapse format, just because it's just easier for me to whittle down the footage, especially because I don't have my hand recording or like a different view. So whenever I'm like doing more of like a screen recording, I find it a little bit easier for you guys to view it when it's a little bit more like in time-lapse rather than just seeing snippets and trying to guess where my mouse is. But as you can see, in the kind of like top left-hand corner of my little workspace, I have a bunch of references, and this is from the game Peak, which has been very popular among people recently because it's like a co-op game. I believe you can play it solo as well, but this one in particular, I was taking screenshots from I guess like the gameplay from both Calyx Debonair stream alongside with Reimu Endo's stream, which are both VTubers and both are my Oshis. But I kind of wanted to take the time just to kind of doodle along while they were playing the game. Now, by the time I took, I think the references that you see majority on the left-hand side, and a lot of the moments that I'm drawing during the stream are moments that already happened. So this is probably around, I think it's half an hour to an hour into the stream that I decided to try to figure out how I wanted to format today's drawings. So I think eventually you'll also see me paste some more screenshots onto the canvas, but you won't see it too often, just because like I don't want to add too many new doodles to my entire spread that I'm doing right now, just because it will just prolong how long it will take me to actually finish today's drawing. But the plan is to just capture funny moments from the stream or whatever and just doodle them, because in the past I would actually work on like separate projects, or maybe I'm working on something else and I would have like a stream on in the background, and oftentimes it's like of somebody playing like a game, or like they're playing maybe a co-op game and they're chatting, and I always find like there's funny moments that I want to remember, and I often jot them down either like on the sticky notes or like the notes app on your phone or on your computer. And then sometimes if I'm really wanting to capture certain moments or quotes or whatever from the stream, I would actually write it down on a sticky note so that I can draw it later. I'm kind of realizing that this might sound stranger to some people if you're not really into like drawing fan art, because if you're drawing like your OCs or something that's like not related to the stream, this probably like all doesn't really matter, or like it doesn't make you feel compelled to do a drawing. So my whole point of like writing down moments or like little things that happen from like streams or shows or things that I've watched in the past, it mostly stemmed from me watching Going 17 a long time ago, especially like during the time when Going 17 was mostly like behind the scene vlogs, and I would draw the moments while watching the video and just draw it in my sketchbook, and I would do it kind of in the sketch page kind of way, and I would just doodle with pen, fill it with color, and call it like a spread. And then after that I started moving along to like, if I'm watching like stream VODs, I would try to screen cap or like take screenshots, write down notes and stuff of certain moments that I want to draw a little bit later, because it kind of gives me a little bit more to work with for the character, and I'm not just like thinking of whatever to draw with that character out of thin air per se. So it's kind of more, in a way, canon to what I was drawing at the time. So this one in particular, it was like a collab stream with 4 different VTubers together, and their collab or like group name is technically Haunted Rock Club, because it's supposed to be like melding of their different names technically, or like their vibes. So we have like a bartender, we have like a bouncer, bodyguard, what do you want to call it, and then we have a ghost, and then we have like a doll as like the main cast. But they ended up going with something else completely different. So if you're in the know-how or like in the know of this particular collab group, they call themselves Abagaduyab, and I love this group so much, so I wanted to definitely draw something for it, and just listening to the stream just gave me more motivations to continue working on this very silly little layout. But kind of like enough about the behind and kind of like the why I'm doing this. Let's talk about the process a little bit. So initially I was actually gonna do like just one illustration capturing, I think one character holding like a camera to get like a group selfie, and that was just going to be the drawing that I was going to do. But because I knew the stream was going to go for a fairly long time, and there was a lot of things that I wanted to include from like the half an hour that I happened to catch prior to planning to record, I thought it'd be easier for me to make it more like a photo album or like a scrapbook of some sort, and kind of like let itself do like recording of the moments by having like little Polaroids or like pictures, stickers, notes, and stuff just pasted on like a page in like someone's book. So that's kind of why you would have saw that I switched from doing kind of like one drawing, and then I quickly started to make the layout for the book. I planned out my little areas where I wanted to have like the actual pictures be, and then draw little moments within those boxes, which I am currently still doing. And then I ended up adding some little stickers here and there. I didn't have some references that I wanted to include. So if you did happen to watch, well, first of all, if you're like a Neji Sanji fan or just like a VTuber fan of any of these guys, and you happen to watch the Peak collab in particular, the one that I wanted to include was the little, I don't know if it's like a frog. It's like the little green friend in the backpack of, usually I think it's in Maria's backpack, but sometimes Calyx has it, and I think it's Bing Bong. So I wanted to include them, but I couldn't find like a good angle to see them. I think it's because I missed like 10 minutes at the very beginning of stream, so maybe that's where they talked about it more. And then I was gonna include like a little skull for like when one of the characters died, and then, you know, there's just like small little things I wanted to include, but I decided to simplify it a little bit more. But I also just wanted to show you guys the process for this, because I do think it's kind of fun to kind of do like a sketch page, or in this case more like a scrapbook spread-ish, of just like a montage of things you like or enjoy from a series. It could be like funny moments, your favorite moments, or like, I don't know, the most memorable as well. Because like I said, like I would do these for almost like 17 vlogs, and I would take quotes to do like big bold text or like text bubbles for the character or like the member that I was drawing at the time. So it's kind of fun to have that, because like you can play around with dialogue. You can definitely do this for like TV shows for sure, if you have the time to memorize stuff or like write it down super quickly. The thing I like about doing these kinds of spreads in my sketchbook at the time is that it was just easy for me to do any kind of like VOD, so that I could always run the video back to make sure that I captured the moment that I wanted. I could also take a pause, draw the scene out, and then continue with the video. But for live streams, which is like this one that I started doing, I can only capture a certain amount before I actually have to commit, unless I'm doodling super quickly and just trying to jot down as much as I can, and then later on maybe I'll do the line work and the coloring afterwards. Kind of similar, like if you're doing, I guess like live drawing, I forget what's called, but basically like when you have a live model and you're doing drawings from them, oftentimes if you have to go through like a bunch of different poses and stuff, it's easier to quickly basically mark down all the information that you need and then do details later, because if you don't have like the foundation for it all set out, then you're gonna be lost when it comes down to like actually having to do like the details and stuff, and maybe you don't really need like the model to be present during that time. So for this case, it was just easier for me to have screenshots. So I had like a bunch from earlier, and I compiled them all into one canvas. Now usually I would use VizRef to compile all my references, but because I wanted to crop some stuff and like have them laid out in a certain way and potentially like color pick, I found it a little bit easier for me to just make a separate canvas and like keep that all together instead of using VizRef this time. But let's slowly jump back into the drawing process. So after I finished doing kind of like blocking in the sketches and like what I wanted for each individual little photograph, I ended up doing like a more detailed sketch of what I wanted each thing to be. And then after that, we lowered the opacity and I switched over to, unfortunately, it is like a brush that's in Japanese, so I can't really say what the brush is, but I'll link it down in the description if I remember. So do check it out if you're interested in this kind of like pencil-y-ish marker textured type of brush. And I thought it would fit kind of with more like a scrapbook doodle kind of theme because the texture is not like completely solid. But I also like just like the line thickness and quality to it. It doesn't really taper super thin, so there's very little line width variation, which makes it a lot easier for me to just move on with the line art without having to worry about like trying to give line width variation, thickening the lines, making things look super clean. I just need the thing to be down on the page as soon as possible. So for this particular drawing, or like these sets of drawings, I ended up adding their little peak characters as their little ghosts, alongside with their little, just their heads or whatever on the side as like little stickers. And then I tried to translate at least a little bit of their clothing into their like chibi forms, just because I do want them to be like represented as is. There are going to be some details that I ended up missing out when I was doing the line art and sketching, so I kind of forget it at the very end. But after I posted it, that's when I kind of like realized like, oh, I actually forgot a few things. Like Calyx, I forgot to add the blue undertone for his hair. I also forgot one part of, I think it's like one of the photos doesn't have his glasses present. And then for Olive Maria's little chibis, I forgot to give her little heart ahoge, which I feel like is so important, and I feel so bad that I forgot it. So note to self, just don't rush these. I should always do like a thorough check whether or not I've missed any of the details. But for the most part, this is very fun. I would like to do this a lot more, and unfortunately, I actually still have a lot of these sticky notes and notes that I had from past like collabs and videos where I wanted to draw like a sketch page or two or doodle in my sketchbook of those moments, but I never got around to it. So it's kind of nice to do these ones at least live so that I can kind of just put my entire focus on it. Because like I said, if I don't do it right away, I feel like the longer I wait, the desire and my probability of wanting to do it, or even like actually finishing it at this point, gets smaller and smaller, to the point where it feels a little stupid sometimes. But I've put all that effort to write down like timestamps, I write down the quote, or like I write down a scenario that I might want to draw out in that case. So yeah, sometimes, you know, I just need to take some time to doodle for myself and just like put a video on, draw from that video, and just let myself work, instead of like always having the VOD or whatever in the background and just like letting it kind of like mindlessly play. Even though like both are enjoyable, it's just something that I would like to include into my sketchbook, or like just doodles in general. Especially like if I'm stuck on what to draw, I think could be like a very fun idea to do. So other than the sketching portion, I think line art actually took me quite a bit of time. I think it would have went sketching first just because it was more of like planning, but I do a lot of like scribbling for the most part to indicate certain things, which is sometimes very bad when it comes to like interpreting your own sketch for line art. But line art takes me a long time just because, one, I have to translate what my scribbles are, and then two, I am trying to keep it as clean as possible. There are some areas that I end up missing in terms of like not connecting certain lines. So when it does come to coloring, I'm not able to use like the selection tool or the bucket tool to its full ability. Oh, also, backgrounds for these are going to be a little bit more simplified for the most part. Some of these, like, I did add little indications of like nature or like an indication of some sort of background, but for the most part I'm gonna do it purely in color, so hopefully it gives enough context in that ways. So I think at this point the line art is basically finished. I'm separating my little sticker versions from the rest of the line art and putting like a white outline, filling them in, and then adding some sort of drop shadow, because I wanted to make sure that they kind of look like they're stickers, and I wanted them to be placed on top of our little photographs or whatever. But we can move on to the coloring portion now. So for the coloring, because we are doing kind of like a sketchbook or like photo album or scrapbook maybe, I ended up going with kind of like a sandy manila-ish color and adding in my shadows right away. I'm also using the exact same brush that I used for the line art for the coloring because I like the texture. It almost has like a marker watercolor look when you kind of size it up really big, and then it kind of has a more pencil marker look when you use it for line art. So to experiment a little bit, I always want to check whether or not certain textures kind of remain the way they are if you alpha lock them. So I forgot to do it for this particular piece, I think, or like this particular background. But basically what I would do is fill in my area. At this point I'm coloring Zeal, which is the character at the very front right here, and doing just one pass in one go and laying down the texture. And then after that we can alpha lock it, and luckily this brush actually does keep its texture. It's like all maintained if you do alpha lock it. So the reason why I like to do kind of like the base color or like the silhouette of the characters, whichever you want to call it, like blocking in of the colors. In this case, we're only using one color at first. I like doing that in one pass. And the reason being is that a lot of textured brushes, especially like this type, if you go over and over again, it often does more like of a solid fill and you kind of lose that texture. So to maintain it, I just want to do one pass so we can get a clean look at that texture. I will alpha lock it and then switch to a smoother brush. So I do this a lot also with like the watercolor brush or the old beach brush, I believe, in Procreate as well, to maintain the texture. And then I switch back to my painting brush after it's alpha locked and just like do subtle gradients or like softer coloring on top so that we can have a little bit of color shifts instead. And then that way I can have different colors within the particular textured area that I already laid out initially. Also, the reason why I have like some of my panels or like photographs kind of like blocked in with a really bright color, I think initially this one was kind of like a reddish orange, and then these ones that are kind of a cyan color are all on their own separate layers, and that way I know which ones are which, and then I can also just, you know, alpha lock them or put a new selection. We'll do a pass of our texture brush once again and then alpha lock it and then add in all of our colors. I feel like I don't draw like this super often, and I don't mean the coloring style, but like just the simple type of chibi with kind of like clean-ish line work. I think I did something similar where I would do it with, I think, something in Procreate. So I would use probably the 6B pencil to give that textured line look, and then I'll use the old beach brush to add in our color by using a similar method. So doing like one pass of color if I can, and then after that I will just add in our softer colors and like color shifts, gradations, everything like that with like a larger painting brush that does have no texture, and then we can just play around with that kind of flat colored look. And then hopefully I left like certain areas for some highlights if I can. I think I didn't really do it here as much. I ended up just like adding some in afterwards, and I just picked the paper color so that we could have that kind of resembled our highlights. Also, apologies if you're not really into like VTubers. I hope that me picking something very niche in this case for the topic of like what I'm drawing isn't too boring for you guys. Just kind of enjoy the little funny, funky little chibis I ended up drawing here. Because I think initially I was actually going to be drawing something else for today's video, but I did end up running very low on time. I think I briefly mentioned it probably on a stream as well as like some previous videos that at the end of July I am going to be gone for a little bit, and I'll be back I think just in time for the next week. So I'll be back on Monday of next week, I think, but you guys will see this video on Saturday, so it doesn't really affect you guys too much, but I will be gone, so I'm trying to film these all in advance. But yeah, hopefully it doesn't look too rushed today, but here's our little final drawing of our little moments from the stream. It was super fun to watch this one. I just love their dynamic so much. There's a lot of like sibling energy, so it's just enjoyable to watch them have fun, poke fun at each other, and like cooperate to get to where they need to be. And just like overall, it's just fun to draw them. So I always enjoy drawing a lot of like my Oshis and stuff, as well as just like any collabs. I always find very fun to listen to as kind of like background noise if I need to. So hopefully today's video wasn't too strange, and hopefully you guys enjoyed watching me do a little bit more of like a doodly sketch style-ish type of video instead of doing something that's more fully rendered or just like a fully a sketch at this point. But I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye!